Welcome to Everything is Dead, the show where we challenge the myths of B2B and uncover how go-to-market professionals are thriving in channels everyone says are dead. Today, really excited. We're diving to all things content with Francois, Head of Growth Marketing at Canva. Welcome to the show, mate.
Thanks, Ben. Very happy to be here.
No, I'm excited. I'm really excited. Canva's done some phenomenal stuff over the years, and so it was really excited to talk with you and unpick some of the things that you're doing extremely well. So I always start off these episodes with a broad sweeping statement, which is what you hear on LinkedIn, the clickbait style posts. And so if I said to you, content is dead, how would you react broadly to that statement?
Yeah, it's a classic. The This is Dead has been going on for 15 years now. So look, one thing you mentioned, which is ironic, is let's say content is dead or SEO is dead, is what a lot of people on LinkedIn are using today. But LinkedIn in itself is proving to be an amazing channel in 2024 and in 2025 that is really like about content and about sort of amplifying the message and building that brand, which is really funny because they kind of use that as a
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. It's all like, oh, it's dead, but this is what I'm doing,
Yeah, it's actually,
Yeah,
I love that you started off there actually, because it's totally true. And we over index on LinkedIn from a SenseBox standpoint, but fundamentally, what are you posting? It's content at the end of the day. So I love that you started there because it's actually deeply ironic that people are posting that and then writing content about it fundamentally.
yeah. And I think, look, I don't think we see as much sort of content is dead as you see like MQL is dead or SEO is dead, right? Because those are paths where, especially with AI, is pretty clear. Like you see Google search dropping, people are using AI for their searches, so it makes a lot of sense. I think the content piece and what's more controversial, I guess, is that as AI gets really good, then you have the ability in your hands to create world-class content very cheaply that you can localize for any market just using technology. And the advance of AI, it's so fast that in just a few years, 100% of AI that does better content than anyone that you know of, which is really scary. And on top of that, as you build layers to educate the AI on the tone or the brand or what do you want it to be or to say, it gets really scarily accurate. And suddenly you have a multiplication of amazing content. And as it's like what happened to email, then
Yeah.
when you have too much email, you just give up. I myself gave up on my inbox and I primarily work at Canva from Slack because I just don't have time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, I love it.
yeah.
I want to double tap on something you said, which I think is really interesting from like the SEO side, which is okay. And I agree, can do a good job, especially if the previous approach was to hire a cheap agency to churn out keyword specific content. The way that we've started to approach that, or at least look through the lens of content traditionally of just writing stuff to write stuff, I think is, I wouldn't say dead, but less effective than it ever has been before. And so what we're looking to do at SenseBark at the moment is we're taking keywords and we're actually building video content around it. So anything that's maybe bottom of funnel, SenseBark versus Loom, let's just take that as a common search. We're actually creating like a video around that, slinging it up on YouTube. And what we're finding, because Google is doing this weird thing where it's trying to optimize for human content, it's starting to push those kind of video carousels to the top of Google search. And I don't know if you've got an opinion on how people should approach or how you're approaching it when in actual fact, like how do you
Mhm.
get around this barrage of AI generated content?
Yeah, no, this is a great question. And I think something that I really like, something that is really dear to my heart is that like I'm a marketer. And marketing has fundamental principle as a discipline to understand how people buy, which is made of psychology, understanding. And I think today, new generation of marketer that are really technical, like they're really gifted. They can build API, they can do a lot of stuff like GTM engineer stuff,
Yeah.
right? But they're not good marketers
Yep.
because they actually don't fundamentally understand like people and how they buy. And you can only be really good at content when you actually know who you sell to and what's on their mind. And enough in marketing, like the best content marketers they're like 100 years ago when they used to write letters, long form letters,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and that form of content marketing, was working back then and is working today and only working if you really understand the motivation of kind of your persona and what does the buying journey look like. And I think once you have that fundamental, you can build your content strategy around, okay, is it at the awareness level, top of the funnel? What do they need to know about the space in general? Is it middle, where it's more like problem space, like how do you talk about this? Or is it more bottom, where you really introduce how your product solve some of those problems? And that kind of strategy of really understanding the who and why they buy, and then matching that with really strong content strategy along the way is still true today. What has changed is the pace, or how quickly you can churn amazing content, and then the distribution has changed tremendously, where we live in a world where people have very low attention span, videos above all, feeds, like very quick, like information. And so in that world, you need to figure out like, what does that look like for your distribution, which again is part of fundamental of marketing.
Yeah, and the reason I'm smiling is because like we've had experts that come on and talk about paid ads, we've had experts that come and talk about cold calling, like literally every, I'd say, tactic under the sun to generate demand. And actually, without question, everybody goes back to it all starts with really understanding your audience, which again seems insane to say, but I do agree with you that some companies that I talk with can't tell me the audience they serve, the pain point they sell to that audience, fundamentally, how they make their audience's lives better, and then what channel. Because let's just use LinkedIn, right? LinkedIn has become extremely popular in the B2B SaaS space. The reason that SendSpark over indexes on LinkedIn is not because it's buzzy, it's because our audience, which is salespeople, that is one of the primary channels that they utilize to consume content. And so, again, fundamental marketing principles, how do we get in front of our audience on a regular basis? Let's just use the channels they use on a regular basis. Doesn't mean if you're a home services tech company, you sell to home services businesses, you should even touch LinkedIn, because it doesn't make any sense. And so I wonder if you could maybe double tap on that, and let's just take the audience back to marketing principles 101. If there's somebody listening to this that's, damn, that's me, like I don't actually understand my audience, like I don't have that deep understanding, like what are some of the things that you recommend they do today to really figure that out?
Yeah, it depends on who they are and where they are on their journey themselves. So if like a startup, for example, the whole point of a startup is actually find your audience.
Yeah.
So you don't know. You just got to go and then figuring out, okay, who has the best use case, who's using the product, who's retaining. So at an early stage, it's a lot harder because it's very dynamic. But as soon as you get to a mid stage to larger stage, like company, you have to go back to ICP and persona. And usually like the product marketing function is so important for that, because they're the bridge between the true understanding of the product value and then your audience and how do you want to talk about it. And what I found and worked really well at Canva, and we talk about content, is we have what we call like a motion structure, where at the strategy level, when we plan, we have a triangle between a PMM, a growth person, and a content person. And we design the strategy together, and then the content group takes over in terms of the execution. And then part of growth handle the distribution. And obviously we look at that. But I would say go back to the basic, which is what's your ICP, who are your persona, and then the classic, what's the value prop, what are the use case, what do you sell to? And just going through that exercise sounds so silly, but it's actually really hard to nail it.
Yeah.
And then there will be many cases where, what's so difficult about that exercise is like you need the quantitative analysis, which is look at all of your current customer and then figuring out the one that have the highest LTV, the best ratio of CAC to LTV, or better revenue or retention, whatever you want, as well as qualitative, which is talk to your sales team, talk to
Yeah.
people on the floor, what are they listening to? And where it gets really interesting is when you marry the two, you realize that sales knows a lot, but sometimes it's anecdotal. And the data will only tell you so much until you really go deep into the why, which is why, you don't have an AI for that just yet.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. Yeah, I love it. There's actually, so part of these episodes are giving people like tactical, right? The real tactical side of things. The motion that you just mentioned there is, I think, very interesting, that triangle kind of content motion, right? That you have. I actually think I'd like to go there next, because that fascinates me from like the process, how you came to that model of content creation at Canva, and then maybe walk the audience through like, what does that actually look like in practice? Who brings the idea to the table? When does growth get involved from a distribution standpoint? Because that's actually probably the way that people should be doing it. But I feel like for a lot of people it would seem alien that there's so many people involved from a content standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, Canva is this 5,000 employee now, so it's a bit bigger. There's obviously more people. We've tried a lot of different structure. We try to be super flexible. And I think what I love about Canva is we still very fast. Like we ship very fast, which has been really good. The principle of the structure is pretty clear. It's like content is king or queen, right? Every initiative that we do in growth involve content. A landing page, an ad, a video, it's all content, right? And so starting from that principle, instead of, okay, growth of the strategy, we send it to content and they execute and they have zero context, we start the strategy together. And then the role of growth in there is to understand the levers that we're pulling. So, if it's paid, what is the equation and the metrics, right? If it's like SEO and organic, what are the metrics? And to build hypothesis around if we were to do this is what we're going to get, and then prioritize based on. So that's the role of growth, is to what bets are we placing that will get us to pipeline number, revenue, whatever you're targeting. The PMM role, it's at the top, which is like telling us what's the audience, how do we sell the product, are we shipping something that is interesting, what are the milestones, etc. Work with growth. And then with content, then it's all about what does that look like? How do we translate those experiments that we want to run in growth into content? And if we want to do, let's say, a full integrated campaign based on a report co-branded with the Harvard Business Review, for example, which we've done this year, then there's a full distribution plan around that.
Yeah.
Right. Like we have a full plan around it. And then all of the different channel owners will come in and assemble around that. Because for me, content is 50% creation, 50% distribution.
Yeah, 100%.
If you don't have the distribution, it doesn't work. So that's the role. And by starting with that triangle, we ensure that the brief is created together, and therefore the execution is going to be a lot more seamless.
Yeah, and I like what you said about, and again, typical from a growth standpoint, is to make a bet based on a prediction of results. Do you do a retroactive as part of that process as well? Say, for example, your report with Harvard Business Review, right? You've made some bet, got your distribution strategy. Is there a retroactive that the entire team does, which is here's how we performed, and then here's the learnings, because the next big report, maybe we tweak a couple of things as well?
100%. And that's where I guess the plugin for Canva comes in, but like the power of visual communication. We've got really good template for presentation where we for this integrated campaign, we run like really strong reporting on the back of that really shows what happened, what channel was really successful for us, more insight on the audience, are they senior, are they in our ICP, etc. So we have that level of reporting that has been really good for us. And I think that has really facilitated showing back to the business like how important content is.
Yeah, I love it. There always has to be payback, right? Fundamentally, I think for a lot of this stuff, which is, I think, and again, the reason I asked that question is I've been part of a lot of companies where content isn't as well thought out. It's not, there's not any learning that comes from it fundamentally. Like we put it out there because it's, again, typical SEO, right? There's a keyword we're going after. Maybe we'll look at our rankings a month from now, but there's no retroactive done to actually assess like the process and the impact of the content for some companies as well.
Yeah, 100%. And look, the game has changed a lot. When I was working at Van and doing a lot of the content strategy, like we got #1 in the world for retail trends on the back of our content strategy, and we got massive. It was like full, but it was the Wild West in a way that you could slap. You remember those time where you could put like those social icon on the page to like and stuff?
Yeah.
You could actually hack that because they used it as a signal to rank your page.
Yeah.
So you could easily
more thumbs up.
Yeah, exactly. You're like this sort of stuff. But those days is very different, I think, and that's why it's not tactics, it's strategy.
Yeah.
And I'll talk about a couple of things that I think your audience will like. One is, I remember at Van, what was important to me is to go and visit prospects and then ask them, okay, you're about to buy a point of sale software for your retail business. What are your criteria? How do you evaluate it? And some people would be like freestyle, right? They'd be like, oh, I sign up for a tool, I like it, I go. And some people would be very thorough and they would have a checklist and they would have like research and they would have all of these things that they need to tick the box. And then you realize that none of their research will happen without you knowing.
Yeah.
And so you need to know what they're searching for. So you can then create the content to build those gaps. And that can be anything. That can be a product demo video. That can be something about like security and SSO. That can be some that enterprise care about. That can be anything that is really like on their mind during that buying journey. And your role is to understand that and then fill the gap with content. So you know at any point they can self-serve, do their research, and decide that you are better than anyone else.
Yep.
So that's
Yeah.
number one. Yeah. Number two, which I think this one is funny because it's pretty controversial. Everyone is, yeah, MQL is dead. MQL is so bad. You see all of this like gurus on LinkedIn with like a lot of followers like talking about that. And I feel really funny about it because first of all, like we've been talking about that for 15 years. It's fundamentally, it's not about like MQL or SL. It's about your definition of it. And I think where people got it wrong is that they're like, oh, someone download a piece of content. They are qualified for the sales team. And then they push that to the sales team. Like, I get it, but like, let's start talking about it. Like 99% of the marketer today understand that. I don't know why it's still a thing. I think what people should talk more about is that, like, what does that mean for the funnel? And how do you actually react to that? So for us, for example, like Canva, being a marketing qualified lead means that you raise the hand and say, I want to talk to the sales team. So you either say contact sales team or you say request a demo.
Yeah.
And that's the qualifier that says that you are ready,
yeah.
which means that I report on MQL.
Yeah.
And I have all of these people that say MQL is bad, is dead, and this and that. I'm like, I'm at Canva, I do MQL. Do you have a problem with that? And it's a bit stupid because it all depends on the definition. But
Yeah.
what's important then is that how do you treat a content download or a webinar attendance?
Although the interesting one at the moment, which is popular, is website visit even, right? Like you can de-anonymize website traffic. So like now people are saying, if somebody's on your pricing page and you're able to de-anonymize them, that's intent enough to reach out and get them on a get them ask them
Yeah, exactly. And again, that comes back to people who become really good at tactics, but not necessarily understanding the strategy. Visiting a website is certainly an intent signal, right? But it doesn't mean you've reached the threshold by which you're like, I want to buy right now.
Yeah.
And, that understanding is important. So for us, for like webinars or someone coming to one of our events and they don't want to talk to sales yet, they're not an MQL. We treat them as a marketing engaged lead. And then our role is then to understand, did they engage with our content that were more like thought leadership?
Yeah.
Or did they engage with content that is more like bottom of the funnel, product demo video?
I want to do this, so to speak.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And in an ideal world, if you do understand that, then you leverage lifecycle to say that, right, they're not prime there. They might be prime in 6 months. Let's not go too aggressive with them.
Yeah.
I would love to say that our setup is perfect, but it's not. And we still have a lot of work to do around the lifecycle piece. We have some very smart people doing some amazing work, but there's still a lot of like work we need to do there. And also, there's always the temptation when you generate those sort of leads to send them to the sales team because everyone needs to hit their pipeline, which means as a marketer, you're really torn apart between offering the best buying journey, but also what I would say like modern BDRs is so important. I'll do a big shout out to George, who's our BDR lead in Austin, who is amazing, super smart, very amazing. And so this year, we basically run an experiment where we say, let's send our MEL to the BDRs and see how they want to go about prospecting it without being aggressive. Because if you download content, you don't want to be sold to.
Yeah, it's actually genius because then the message becomes, hey, Ben, John from Canva calling up. I saw you downloaded that piece of content on how to do this. Here's some tips, or here's actually how I can walk you through it, so to speak. Like it becomes more value add messaging than transactional at that point, right?
Even better, he is here for George from Canva. I'd like to invite you to our next webinar, or I'd like to invite you to an event near you.
By actually
bringing value. Bringing value, and having less pressure on sell. I think the what's been fascinating to me is that I've done inbound for 15 years. I also understand outbound, but it's getting very blurred. Where
Yep.
like outbound, for example, can do a fantastic job for the brand if it's done really nice and actually increase your inbound funnel by quite a lot. And so same with the BDR space is technically they're in sales, but they're an extension of our marketing effort to try to generate pipeline using content. That has worked really well for us. In fact, we're like tripling down on that kind of funnel. And I think where it gets tricky is let's make sure we don't get pushy, right? No one want to get a phone call of buy Canva after reading a white paper. Yeah, that's the worst. You're on our website, connect me on Facebook. I'm now your best friend, and I see a picture of you, and maybe not. And again, it comes down to that basic of the buying journey, the touches. How do you understand about it? And being a good human and being smart. I think if it was all logical, then we don't need to be there. It's all robots.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It picks up an intent signal on the website. AI SDR takes over, sends a message, booked, and then away we go. There's no need for more people to do it.
Yeah, I think the future is exciting in a way that very quickly we are commoditizing what used to be really hard to do, which is to build 360 stores of your understanding of people and company.
Yep.
And back in the day, it was really hard to stitch the data together. But now with AI and the kind of like breaking down of CRM and everything, what will happen is that you'll be like, okay, those accounts are in my target list, and these people are the persona that will buy from those accounts. And this company, I understand all of this marketing engagement signal. They visited the website, they downloaded content, they watch videos, right? And then you'll marry that with all of your other like intent signal that you can think of. And then you'll build that sort of view. And then you'll be like, within this account, there's this buying committee that is here in that buying journey. And you have that full understanding and recommend the next best action.
Yeah.
And we're seeing it happening. What's difficult at the moment is that there's like hundreds of SaaS vendors that do piece of this or are building part of that. And it's moving really fast that people focus more on, oh, it's the tactics that work. Let's implement the playbook today, like website visits and a LinkedIn request, etc. And if everyone can do that, how are you different?
Yeah.
And I get that we need to experiment a lot, but I think going back to that, okay, what's the view of this account? What's the view of those people? What is the data telling us about where they are is really important. And at Canva, what it means is we know at an account level, for example, how much product usage do you have? Who is using it? And it's an amazing leverage when you go and try to consolidate to sell Canva Enterprise.
It's the same type of model that Loom kind of popularized as well, which was like this viral loop. They could tell when I'd signed up, there was a high likelihood of me sending you a video, you'd sign up, next person. And so then they had a groundswell of people. Very easy then to say, hey, 12 people at Canva use our product. Now I need to reach out to target and say, hey, let's get you on an enterprise, because there's enough evidence there to make that call. Right?
So speaking of content, like we have ads on LinkedIn that are one-on-one ads that literally say, hey, Nike, there's already thousands of users on Canva.
Oh, really?
Let's have a chat. And we've scaled that to like dozens and hundreds of accounts. And that worked really well. Yeah. Of course, personalized, it's true. We leverage product data. We go one-on-one on LinkedIn. Some accounts are like, take it down. Of course, they're like, hey, we don't want people to see that. Because technically Canva is not always approved. There's a lot of users that use
by IT, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's that tough balance. But hopefully the conversation was useful. Content's definitely not dead. SEO is not dead. Like marketing is not dead. If anything today, if anyone can build a product in 48 hours, then marketers and growth
is the most important role in the organization. I've said this. I had this conversation the other day, mate. I think as marketers, we're in a great position. I think some sales roles might get deprecated, but you always need distribution at the end of the day, mate. So
you do. Maybe it's time to ask for a raise, Abel. Triple our salary,
absolutely. I appreciate you coming on, mate. Really, really interesting. Loads of good tactical takeaways. Any last parting words? Where can people find you on LinkedIn to read more content?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, find me on LinkedIn if you want to have a chat. Not gonna lie, I'm pretty busy. It's pretty intense, but it's an amazing kind of journey and a rocket ship. So not guaranteed that I'll do one-on-one with everyone, but certainly drop a note, say hi, would love to connect. And if people are like working on interesting things, I'm always like really keen to see what people are doing those days, and the innovation is incredible. It's what a time to be alive.
Yeah, love it.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for jumping on, Francois, and thanks for everybody tuning in to another episode. We'll catch you on the next one.